The grim reality on the streets of Toronto. 35-year-old Candace Rochelle Bob was shot to death in North Etobicoke nearly 1 week ago. Now, she was in a car with several other people at the time. Bob was 20 weeks pregnant, her baby boy delivered by C-section, and at the time of this taping, he is in stable condition. Her death is a horrific reminder of what is happening in this city. Now, the numbers tell the story. There had been a drop in gun murders in Canada's biggest city, but now it has spiked nearly 217% over last year, and the police chief says that local residents need to step up.
Everybody within their communities has an understanding of who is or who may be carrying firearms, who is or who may be using firearms. Make that phone call. That phone call is what makes a difference between safe communities and communities that are not as safe right now.
Lots to discuss, and joining me now is Desmond, columnist with the Toronto Star, and Joe Warmington, columnist with the Toronto Sun. Welcome to you both. This shooting took place in the Jamestown neighborhood of Toronto, and there's been a renewed debate after this about carding and whether or not, if that practice had been in place, would this murder or any of the 29 others, Joe, that have happened in this year so far, would they have been prevented?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult thing to analyze, isn't it? Interesting that the chief says to make a phone call, and yet just as we're doing this now, we're working on another story about people shooting into a kitchen, and there was another incident yesterday. You're not safe to phone the police or to tell people what's going on, and the carding is only part of it. I don't know if it would have made any difference, but it's certainly something that the police aren't doing anymore. And, you know, the information and the intelligence that come from it is not available anymore.
Yeah. How do you feel about the loss of carding as a police tool, Desmond? Is it hindering police?
No, actually, carding is not over. So when Joe says that the police have lost information, the police have databases on hundreds of thousands of Torontonians that they have carded over the last 8-10 years. They still have those databases. They're not gone. There is a new regulation on carding, but it doesn't come into effect until next January. And police still stop and question people on the streets and still document their information.
Too bad they didn't do the guy that killed Candace and get him stopped and talk to him about the weapon that he had, and he throws it into a car and kills it.
Why do you think the police, if they know who that person is, why do you think they didn't stop him?
Well, I don't know, but if they were so afraid of you and all your, actions.
They're afraid of me.
Well, they are, and you have all the power in this province because you can get the mayor to do what you want him to do, and you can get the chief to do what you want him to do. But the reality is that we've got 30+ homicides. It's actually more because there's a couple that they haven't deemed homicides yet. We're on pace for record numbers, which you can dismiss if you want. But I mean, I've been doing this a while, and I've seen what's happening. So anyway,
well, let me say this, Joe. Somebody is afraid of black people like me, but I think it's actually columnists like you, because what you would like to happen is you would like to see people like me continue to be stopped and questioned and documented on our streets for no reason.
It's just more of your fiction. I mean,
no, let me finish what I'm saying. I didn't interrupt you.
No, you're going to call me.
I didn't interrupt you. Let me finish what I'm saying, and you can respond.
I can talk. I mean, I'm allowed to talk. It's a debate. You're not going to control me or any agenda. Go ahead, though.
Right,
I'm listening.
I'll talk to Jeff.
Well, Desmond,
what I'd like to tell you is that when people suggest that carding could stop a crime like this from happening, they're suggesting, as Joe has, that the police know who's doing it, but because of me and my calling out, stopping arbitrarily innocent people, that the police won't stop guilty people. That's actually what Joe was trying to tell you.
Can you name the victim of the woman that was in the car in the LCBO? Can you name her right now? Please do.
Are you suggesting to me that you care more about black people being killed on the street?
No, I care about everybody that's being killed.
And why are you blaming my community for what's happening?
Why
are you blaming me for what's
community,
happening?
you don't represent a community.
I see.
You don't represent it. You just represent yourself.
Okay.
It's all of our community.
On behalf
Everybody
of
is the
myself,
same. Everybody's equal.
On behalf
You're
of
entitled
myself,
to your view.
on behalf of myself, I have been stopped dozens of times
sorry to hear that.
because I'm black.
Right.
Well, you're not sorry to hear it because you want it to keep happening.
Let's see.
You want me to be stopped and other people to be stopped, even though you say the police know who's doing it. If the police can go to somebody that they have information about and question them, that is not carding. That's not what we're fighting against. We're fighting against the arbitrary stopping of people like myself and the document. Well, it shouldn't happen, but you're calling for it to come back when somebody gets killed.
Let
You're
me
using
interject
our
here.
deaths to capitalize on your agenda.
Let me interject here for just a second and ask you both. do you think that the battle over carding, has it had some sort of chilling effect on police, that they don't feel as if they could...
It took out an ad, Jeff, and they're saying, and they've written letters, and I've written about it. Desmond talks as if that this is nothing happening here. It is a crisis in the city, and he wants to blame me, and I don't want to blame him.
I'm not blaming
I don't
you.
think that a journalist like Desmond Cole should be pulled over for no reason. You can't put those words in my mouth or anybody's mouth.
That's what carding is.
The reality is there's no carding going on now, and there's no engagement going on now. Street checks have been around forever. You know, I've been a reporter and a police reporter in this town for 25 years. So, you know, I know a thing or two about what's going on. We've got double the homicides. Are you okay with that?
Jeff, if the police are not stopping people on whom they have information about crimes, that is their problem as police officers. Carding did not do anything.
That's not even true.
Can I finish what I'm saying without you interrupting one time? Carding, the regulation that came down about carding, didn't change any law. The law already says you can't arbitrarily stop somebody. So if the police have actual information, they can still go and talk to somebody. The police can still get a warrant. The police can still do investigative detention where they see somebody running away from a crime and think that person might be part of it. They still have all those tools. So to tell people like me that we're stopping the police from doing their jobs, if the police choose not to do their jobs, I think that that's their responsibility and shouldn't be put on me.
But because the politicians are so weak, Meritori is afraid of Desmond and all the kind of fallout from it, and people like you know, these other kind of weak politicians that look at. You did not name the victim.
Well, you know what? Let me get in here again, and that's a very important question, Desmond, and we want to get to that next. I got to get a break, but obviously a lot of passion and a lot of fire and a lot to talk about on this subject, including the coverage of it. Should the media, when the bullets are flying in Toronto's at-risk communities, be doing a better job of searching out more positive stories to tell? We'll dig into those comments from the police chief coming up after this break. And welcome back. We're continuing our conversation about a deadly spike in gun violence here in Toronto. The latest reminder of it comes with a shocking murder. 35-year-old Candace Rochelle Bob was shot to death nearly 1 week ago in North Etobicoke. Now, she was in a car with several others at the time. She was also 20 weeks pregnant when she died. Her baby boy was delivered by C-section. Now, at the time of this taping, the baby is in stable condition in hospital. This is obviously a horrific murder, but not an isolated one. Fatal shootings here in the city have increased by more than 200% over last year. Obviously, that is newsworthy, but is the media ignoring some of the other more positive stories in Toronto's at-risk neighborhoods?
When it comes to the communities, the media is never there until they see chalked outline bodies. So why not go in there and look at what some of the positive role models are doing and tell those stories a little bit more instead of everyone's jumping on a bandwagon whenever there's something that's critical. And I think that that's something that needs to be balanced out right now.
Back with Joe Warmington from the Toronto Sun, Desmond Cole from the Toronto Star. Desmond, does the chief have a point? Does the media need to do a better job of getting those positive stories out?
I think he does actually have a point on this, in the sense that maybe when somebody like Ms. Bob is so tragically murdered, the reaction is perhaps not to rush out and do some kind of positive story when there's a horrific murder that's gone on. At the same time, though, it's a lot of the negative stories about neighborhoods like Rexdale that perpetuate this stereotype that this is all that goes on there, that violence and murder and crime are the only things that go on in a neighborhood like Rexdale. This is usually the time when we hear about a neighborhood like that. And that's part of the reason why people want carding and high police presences, which already exist, by the way, in these neighborhoods, because there's this stigma that you gotta crack down on Rexdale. So I do agree that there should be more positive reporting, but I think there should be more creative reporting as well. So for example, Jeff, I don't hear anyone talking about the fact that if all these guns are going off, perhaps there's an issue with supply of guns in the city of Toronto. Maybe in the last 18 months it's gotten a little easier to get a weapon. Well, we should be exploring that as the media, not asking whether or not it's the black community's fault for advocating against arbitrary stops, not asking whether or not we should be talking more about black-on-black crime when we don't know who the shooter is. These are the kind of things that my friend Joe is perpetuating.
Well, Joe, does the chief, again, have a point here? Should the media be covering more positive stories?
He has no point. The chief has no point. We all do those stories. You want me to talk about the 12-year-old kid that I've written about that I took down to the Raptor game, who is now in jail for murder, or the other one that was murdered? We've been doing those stories. The chief should do his job. His job is to go and arrest the bad guys, and Desmond's not wrong about the guns. That's a little bit of a negative story, though, I hate to say. And the reality is that the people all over the city are walking around with guns freely. They're not afraid. They're not afraid of anything because the police are afraid to do their job. And if they do, they're going to be called racist.
We're going to run out of time here, but I want to know, should the chief be looking more inward? Because that's one thing we didn't hear in this press conference that he held earlier this week about the force and the police. He, was talking about political forces. He was talking about us, the media. He never mentioned his own people, the force.
No, I agree, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy to catch people who commit gun violence, who commit murder with guns. That's a very difficult job, and it's the police's responsibility. Once again, though, if we spent actual time talking about how that could be done and how trust could be being built between communities, I think we would get further. Yeah. When something like this happens and we go straight for the political, it's the activists' fault, it's the journalists who are talking about carding, it's their fault, and we don't focus on the root problem.
Fault. The police are doing a good job. It's a difficult thing because, as Desmond says, the gunmen are very difficult to catch.
But
Jeff,
things like the G20 kettling and, maybe the team shooting, though, but does that build into a culture of distrust between the police and the community?
But it's old news.
That the chief didn't talk about.
It's not old news for people who are actually still afraid of or distrustful of the police. I mean, if we want people to cooperate with the police...
Why are you so afraid of the police? What are you afraid of?
You obviously haven't listened to all the reporting I've been doing over the last couple of years, if you can ask that question.
Well, no, but tell the audience. Focus Ontario. Tell Jeff here. What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of police shooting people like Andrew Loku and there being no accountability
what
for
about,
it.
What
A 45-year-old black father of
Who
5.
shot Rochelle?
We pay the police to keep us safe. I don't pay somebody who shot Rochelle Bob to keep me safe, and that's the difference, is that we're trying to hold the state accountable, and you're blaming us for that and saying that all these other...
Who am I blaming? Who's us?
You're blaming me and Black Lives Matter and other people in the Black Lives Matter.
I never mentioned
Desmond Cole from the Toronto Star, Joe Warmington from the Toronto Sun.
Watch for his movie, folks. He's got a film crew with him.
I appreciate both of you coming in. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.